So what we see here is a time series of all articles. Germany, we are seeing the units measure. But what we are seeing here is a normal time series of data, which is monthly based. And what we also see is that we have some very high values here, and the other ones are lower. And there are different ways for data preparation. So there are traps when you have gaps in your data. So there are missing values. So, and if you have missing values, then you have nothing to forecast, or you do not have an idea what happens there, and then you cannot forecast it. So the idea of data preparation in this particular point is to close gaps, and to give values with meaning there. So not just put the last value here or put a 10 or whatever. Put something there which is more, let's say, sophisticated. So which has a connection to all the other values. So what we will do is we will delete this value here. So we have a gap. And the other thing what we want to do is we want to find out, so my data has gaps, but maybe my data has also wrong values. So wrong values in the sense of they are way too high. So maybe someone wanted to write 2,000 here, but unfortunately he typed in 20,000. And this will also has a bad effect on forecasting something, because if it's like, okay, I have a very high value here, so maybe then it's also in the next year, so I will forecast this value too. But this is just someone typed in something wrong. But maybe it's meant to be like this. So maybe in April we always have a lot of units sold. It's also possible. So we will not know. But our algorithm will find out. So what the algorithm is doing now is taking this time series. So it goes to until 2017 December. So 3 years of data. And it will look for gaps and for outliers, and it will mark them, and it will give us a suggestion what we should put there instead of the value which is there. So let's try this.
Okay, so what is all this new stuff in there?
So we have these light blue values. These are the interpolation values. So what happens is, so here we have a value here, so interpolation is just giving the exact same value, but where a gap, here's a gap, so here interpolation gives us a suggestion.
So wait a minute, how can I actually understand interpolation? Is that just kind of filling the gaps, or?
It's kind of intelligent way, optimized way of filling gaps. So it finds a gap, and then it there are different options in the web service for doing interpolation, but one of the options is, okay, it looks at the values before the gap and behind the gap, and then tries to fit in this curve. So what is done here is, so there are two values here in the 2000 range, and then we have this 20,000 value, and then it goes back here. So it will be a value between 20,000 and 2,000. And this will happen even if I have a gap of more than 1 month, even if I have 3 missing values or 5 missing values. This will be filled in an intelligent way. It's not like only reproducing the last value. You can also do this. So then you will fill everything with 2,427. But we have some other options here to lay a curve over these values and then give this more accurate value as a suggestion. So this is what you can do with interpolation. So with interpolation is good for filling gaps in an intelligent way, looking at all the other values. And also seasonality is taken into account. So if it's like here we have always higher values in April, then it's also like it's try to mimic this.
One more question about that, sorry. So you have several years of data into this. Does that mean that it would be better at figuring out this interpolation if you have a lot more years of data? Or how can I understand that? Is it better to have as much as possible? Or
so for interpolation, it's like it depends on how many gaps you have. But it's also if you have a lot of data, so then you will have like a more accurate curve over time. So that that if there's only one missing value, the probability is very high that you hit the right value there. So here in this case, it is good to have more data. But it also depends on how many values are missing. So it should be a good ratio between missing values and existing values, because if you have like 3 years data and 2 years missing, so then it's hard to interpolate.
Yeah, makes sense.
So the orange values here, these are the outliers. So these two values are detected as an outlier. In the gap case, it makes sense. Okay, so 0 is considered as an outlier, so it's not non-existent. And this 20,000 value is way higher than the rest.
Yeah.
But only this is marked as an outlier.
Yeah, I was going to ask because they're further on, it doesn't have the orange bar next to it.
Exactly. So this outlier detection functionality, also like the interpolation functionality, will take seasonality into account. So because these higher values are always happening in April, it detects that and will not mark it as an outlier, because it will detects this seasonality, and then it doesn't mark it as an outlier. So the first one has no prior values, so this is marked as an outlier. And it also gives a suggestion for this value. In this case, it's something which fits in this curve. And you see that it's also fitting better than the interpolation, because it knows that this is an outlier. So it gives a better, in this case, it gives better suggestions for the gap. Yeah, and we will see later on that it's very important to have good data here. So that we have good forecast. So in this case, we will use these suggested values here. So in this case, it's 3,000, and put it there, and then here we have to copy the values first, so that we are not splashing on an empty slide.
Okay.
Slice, and then we can give the value here. So now we have no gaps anymore, and now we should be fine with forecasting.
Okay, so basically with this report, we're pre-processing the data so that what we're feeding in is going to be, let's say, higher quality data for
exactly
the next purposes. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So good data quality is always crucial for all artificial intelligence algorithms and methods. Good data and a lot of data.
All right.